The transmission. It didn't begin with an image. It began with a sound. October 11, 2025. 3:42 Universal Time Coordinated. The Madrid Deep Space Communications Complex, one of three main nodes of NASA's Deep Space Network, was operating on its usual overnight schedule. Most of the crew were running automated relay passes for Maven, Odyssey, and Tianwen-1, bouncing telemetry between Mars and Earth. And then, in the middle of an otherwise quiet night, the anomaly appeared. At first, it looked like interference, a faint, narrow-band signal rising above the background noise floor, barely distinguishable. But the spectrum analyzer on Console 4 showed something odd. The frequency was perfectly stable at 1420.406 MHz, the hydrogen line, the frequency no natural emission near Mars should produce with that precision. For the next 42 seconds, the signal held steady. Amplitude oscillated rhythmically, not random static, pulses, distinct and measurable. 4 bursts. A pause. Then 3 shorter ones. One of the operators, Elena Rios, logged the event at 3:43 and 7 seconds Universal Time Coordinated and marked it for review. Her initial assumption, an internal reflection from an Earth-based transmitter. But when she checked the Doppler shift curve, it didn't match Earth's rotation signature. The source wasn't local. It was receding, consistent with an emitter near Mars' orbital velocity. 15 minutes later, cross-checks came in from the Hartbeespoort Radio Astronomy Observatory in South Africa. They had picked up the same pulses, faint but synchronized, down to the millisecond. 2 receivers, half a world apart, both confirming a signal on the hydrogen line. The signal vanished as abruptly as it appeared. No fade-out, no drift, just silence. The pattern. By morning, analysts from JPL had already pulled the raw telemetry from Madrid and Hartbeespoort. When they plotted the pulse intervals, they noticed a strange structure. The timing ratio between bursts matched 1:2 to 4:8, the orbital resonance of Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto, the 4 largest moons of Jupiter. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences don't usually choose the hydrogen line, a frequency reserved in radio astronomy as cosmic neutral ground, one that SETI protocols identify as the universal marker for intelligent origin. The data review log included a note from engineer Dr. Wei Liang, who had overseen spectrum calibration. If this is a reflection, it's the cleanest one I've ever seen. Too clean. Meanwhile, other DSN sites, Goldstone in California and Canberra in Australia, reported no detection. The signal seemed to exist only in the radio window between Europe and Africa, when Mars was just above the western horizon. The source direction. Using time of arrival triangulation, Rios and her supervisor computed an approximate direction vector for the emission. The result fell within 1 arcminute of Mars' apparent position in the sky at that time. Not from behind Mars. Not from deep space. From Mars itself. That shouldn't be possible. None of the active orbiters transmit on that frequency. Maven, Odyssey, and ExoMars all operate on X-band, 8.4 GHz, or UHF for rover relay. 1420 MHz is specifically prohibited for spacecraft use to avoid contaminating radio astronomy. So what, exactly, was transmitting? The disappearance. Later that day, October 11, 2025, the data packet containing the recording was uploaded to NASA's internal DSN archive, flagged as unclassified, for scientific review. But when the government shutdown ended on October 12, and public systems came back online, the event log was gone. The timestamp existed, but the file pointer returned a 0-byte record. The metadata still showed who uploaded it, Rios, Madrid. But when Rios tried to access her copy, her credentials were locked. Within 48 hours, she was reassigned to telemetry monitoring for the Europa Clipper mission, a quieter post, far from the DSN command consoles. When independent researchers from the SETI League tried to verify the anomaly, they found a partial recording mirrored by a Spanish amateur astronomer, José Méndez, who had been scanning the hydrogen line using a home-built 3-meter dish outside Toledo. His archive contained the 42-second sequence in full. When played through an audio converter, the signal sounded almost rhythmic. Not tonal, but patterned, a steady pulse, like the slow heartbeat of something vast and deliberate. Mendez shared the file publicly on October 13 under the title Echo from Mars, DSN anomaly _101125. By October 14, the file link was dead. His account deleted. The aftermath. No official statement ever acknowledged the transmission. NASA's daily DSN status bulletins made no mention of interference. The European Space Agency declined to comment, citing ongoing data integrity verification. But among radio astronomers, the whispers spread fast. Some said it was a residual echo, a radio reflection of Earth transmissions bouncing off an unusual plasma tail left behind by 3I/Atlas as it passed near Mars. Others thought it was a deliberate beacon, triggered as the object aligned with Mars' magnetic field. The most unsettling theory came from an independent researcher named Dr. Marcel Heidmann of ETH Zurich, who noted that the interval of pulses, when converted into binary timing units, produced the sequence 01000001. In ASCII code, that translates to 5 letters. ATLAS. Chapter 2: The Missing Data. If the signal from Mars was the spark, the missing data was the smoke. October 12, 2025, one day after the transmission. While NASA's Deep Space Network came back online following the brief U.S. government shutdown, teams across Europe began routine data synchronization. Among them was the ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter Mission Operations Center, MOC, in Darmstadt, Germany, a small building on the outskirts of the ESA complex, filled with the low hum of servers and rows of blinking consoles. Engineer Dr. Amira Kovacs, responsible for the Nomad spectrometer's telemetry stream, noticed something odd almost immediately. When she compared the downlink from October 1 to 7, the exact period when 3I/Atlas passed Mars, the continuous data graph showed a perfect void. 17 minutes and 24 seconds of nothing. No science packets, no housekeeping telemetry, not even the heartbeat pings every orbiter sends to confirm it's alive. 1. The gap. Data dropouts are not rare in deep space communications. Solar storms, antenna misalignment, ground interference, all can cause packet loss. But what made this anomaly unusual was its precision. 042 Universal Time Coordinated, last valid frame. 059 and 24 seconds Universal Time Coordinated, next valid frame. Delta T equals 17 minutes 24 s exactly. Perfectly round numbers don't happen in chaotic systems. Nature doesn't like integers, as Kovacs wrote in her internal memo. Even stranger, the gap aligned exactly with the predicted closest approach of 3I/Atlas to Mars, within a margin of 2 minutes. She double-checked the backup recorder, a redundant system meant to capture every packet in case of data corruption. It was blank too, zeroed out, as if someone had intentionally overwritten it with empty bytes. The checksum logs, used to verify data integrity, still existed. Each was supposed to contain a unique hash code. Instead, they all displayed the same hexadecimal sequence. 4154 4C 4153. When converted from ASCII, ATLAS to the internal chain, Kovacs escalated the issue to ESA's flight director, Pierre Garnier. Within hours, a private meeting was convened. Attendees included system engineers, IT security officers, and one observer from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, connected via encrypted video link. The meeting transcript later leaked to Reddit's r/Space Investigation forum, though quickly deleted, contained this exchange. Garnier: could this be a hardware glitch? Kovacs: not likely. Both recorders failed simultaneously. Identical checksum strings suggest manual overwrite. JPL liaison, unidentified, could be a test pattern. Calibration routine. Kovacs, then why is the calibration string spelling Atlas? Pause, 7 seconds. Garnier, let's not speculate. Log the anomaly as classified, level 2. Within minutes, the data servers were locked behind new authentication tokens. External mirrors, normally accessible to ESA partner institutions, returned, access denied. When Kovacs tried to revisit the raw data later that evening, her credentials had been revoked. 3. The mirror. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, MSRO, team at JPL began synchronizing their own telemetry. Their high-resolution camera, HiRISE, had been scheduled to capture a short imaging sequence of 3I/Atlas during its Mars flyby. But when the automated image feed was checked, the sequence header was there, the metadata existed, yet each file contained only blank frames of static noise. In one header file, a note appeared in the engineering log. Or code _3409, image redacted per DSN instruction. No one on the MSRO team could recall ever seeing that error code before. When lead imaging technician Harold Sandstrom searched NASA's internal documentation, there was no such code listed. He reached out to the mission software architect in Pasadena, who reportedly told him, "It's a placeholder inserted when higher-level systems intercept an uplink. You're not supposed to see it." Sandstrom, in an email later leaked by an anonymous whistleblower, wrote one line that echoed through online forums for months afterward. "The camera didn't fail. The data was taken from us." 4. The sanitization. By October 15, routine telemetry resumed as if nothing had happened. The ExoMars TGO continued its mapping of trace gases over the Martian poles. HiRISE went back to imaging dune formations in Valles Marineris. But several researchers noticed subtle differences in the publicly available archive. File timestamps from early October were backdated, and sequence numbers no longer matched the normal progression. In total, analysts estimate that 2.3 gigabytes of high-priority imaging and spectrographic data, roughly 1,700 individual records, vanished from all mission repositories between October 3 and October 6. No official statement was ever released. ESA cited data loss due to temporary file server synchronization issues. NASA declined to comment, referring to the ongoing post-shutdown data backlog. Yet, independent archivists who tracked the file hashes noticed something unsettling. Several of the deleted entries were later re-uploaded under different file names, now tagged with the label Training Data Set, Optical Debris Simulation. The supposed training images were entirely black. But their binary structure revealed embedded metadata coordinates: Mars' southern hemisphere, 13 degrees south, 45 degrees west, exactly where 3I/Atlas had appeared in sky tracking models. 5. The whispers. Rumors began circulating through internal channels at ESA. Technicians quietly referred to the event as the Atlas Protocol. Some claimed that during the data blackout, Mars Express instruments recorded a brief surge in magnetospheric activity, a localized magnetic field spike near the planet's limb, lasting 19 minutes, almost identical to the data gap length. Others reported that Mars Odyssey's Themis spectrometer had automatically switched into safe mode right before the flyby, an autonomous behavior triggered only by extreme radiation or electromagnetic interference. But the most haunting rumor came from a ground controller in Darmstadt who spoke to a journalist off-record. The gap wasn't empty. The instruments did record something. But when we tried to open the file, it wasn't telemetry. It was audio. He claimed the file contained a repeating pulse identical to the 42-second hydrogen line signal detected days earlier. And at the very end of that mysterious waveform, in the static, a faint, modulated whisper that, when slowed down, resembled a human voice. A single word. Atlas. Chapter 3, The Light Curve. Objects don't decide to dim. Dr. K. Tanaka, Subaru Observatory Logbook, October 2025. 1. The Observation Window. October 9 to 10, 2025. On Mauna Kea, Hawaii, the night sky was crystal clear, one of the rare windows of visibility before the seasonal storms. The Subaru telescope, operated by Japan's National Astronomical Observatory, NAOJ, had been assigned a brief 2-hour window to track 3I/Atlas, the interstellar body that had recently swept past Mars and was now on a slingshot trajectory through the inner solar system. Dr. Keiko Tanaka, head of the optical analysis team, expected an uneventful session. The object's photometric magnitude was predicted to remain constant around +18.2, faint but measurable. At 1:07 Japan Standard Time, Tanaka's assistant, Ryo Nakamura, initiated the automated exposure series. By 1:13, the first image appeared on the monitor. The object was there, a faint bluish point moving against the backdrop of Capricornus. Tanaka began comparing frames for motion consistency. But the next exposure froze her. The object had dimmed by 2.6 magnitudes in just 4 minutes, a brightness drop so steep it violated known cometary or asteroid models. For a brief moment, the light curve went flat, like a star that had simply decided to stop shining. 2. The anomaly. When plotted, the brightness data formed an impossible pattern. Normally, interstellar objects, such as Oumuamua or Borisov, follow a smooth, predictable light curve as sunlight reflects off their tumbling surfaces. But 3I/Atlas produced a stepped sequence. Light dark, repeating in perfect intervals of 46.2 seconds. Rotation, Nakamura suggested. Tanaka shook her head. No known object rotates with photometric stability that precise. They checked the timing server, synchronized to the Japan Standard Time atomic clock. No errors. The oscillation was real. When the pattern was converted to frequency space, via a simple Fourier transform, the spectrum showed distinct harmonics, like a digital carrier signal modulated over light. Tanaka muttered, almost to herself. It's not reflecting light. It's transmitting it. 3. The spectral code. At 2:02 Japan Standard Time, Subaru spectrograph switched to narrowband mode, targeting the hydrogen alpha, 656.3 nanometers, and oxygen, 630.0 nanometers, lines. Instead of a smooth spectral gradient typical for dust and ice, the instrument recorded pulsed line emissions, sharp, narrow spikes separated by uniform 42-second intervals. That number again. 42. Exactly the same as the duration of the mysterious radio signal recorded 3 days earlier by the Hubble relay. Tanaka documented the finding in her observation notes. Signal repeating at 42's intervals. Structure not random. Suggests deliberate modulation. But as she attempted to export the raw data to NAOJ's central repository, the upload froze at 73%. The terminal displayed an error code she had never seen before. Uplink blocked, DSN priority channel active. A notice popped up. External synchronization in progress. Do not attempt manual override. Within minutes, her data directory, several gigabytes of raw CCD frames, began compressing itself automatically. The file names changed, one by one, replacing timestamps with new identifiers. Atlas_0001.bin. Atlas_0002.bin. Atlas_0003.bin. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the system went idle. Her data folder was empty. 4. The follow-up. The next morning, Tanaka called her contact at JAXA's Tsukuba Space Center, Dr. Hideki Arai, to inquire about any ongoing NASA-ESA collaboration that might have caused the data sync. Arai sounded hesitant. We received a synchronization notice, yes, but it didn't come from JAXA or NASA. The routing header was internal, labeled 3I Protocol/Atlas Directive. When she asked who authorized it, Arai went silent. Then quietly said, Keiko-san, delete everything you have. It's better that way. That evening, when she returned to her office, she found her system access revoked. All local backups, even her external hard drives, displayed the same error when connected. Volume unreadable, encryption mismatch. Only one file remained accessible, her original observation log, automatically backed up to an offline notebook. It contained 42 handwritten entries. 5. The leak. 2 days later, a 90-second video appeared briefly on an astronomy Discord server before vanishing. It was timestamped October 10, 2025, 1:34 Japan Standard Time, matching Subaru's observation window. The footage, apparently captured from a monitoring console, showed a graph fluctuating in intensity, annotated with Tanaka's initials, KT_3I. A thin vertical line pulsed in perfect rhythm, 42 seconds apart, while a spectrograph trace flickered with repeating patterns resembling Morse code. Before the video was deleted, users noted that the final few frames displayed an image enhancement of the object, zoomed and denoised. For a fraction of a second, a shape appeared. Not spherical. Not elongated. A triangular silhouette, luminous along its edges, rotating slowly, with a dim central glow that seemed to pulse in sync with the signal. Then the screen went black. 6. The report that never existed. In the days that followed, Tanaka was contacted by an investigator from Japan's Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology, MEXT. They requested all her observation notes for archival consistency. She complied, handing over the physical logbook. It was never returned. Weeks later, when NAOJ released its official October summary, the 3I/Atlas entry was missing entirely. The data slot for October 9th to 10th was labeled weather interference, data not usable. Yet everyone who had been on Mauna Kea that night remembered the sky, perfectly clear, the air dry, and the stars southwest sharp they felt close enough to touch. 7. The silent revision. By mid-October, NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory quietly updated the official orbital parameters of 3I/Atlas. The object's albedo, its reflectivity, was revised downward, and its spin rate re-evaluated to match a smooth, non-oscillating model. But an amateur astronomer in Chile, Felipe Duarte, had been tracking the same region independently using a small 0.6 m telescope. He released his own light curve, and it matched Tanaka's original stepped pattern almost perfectly. His caption simply read, "The object blinks." Within 24 hours, Duarte's post vanished, and his account was suspended for spreading disinformation about official mission data. 8. The implication. When independent researchers later reconstructed the lost Subaru data fragments from cached online traces, they discovered that the brightness pattern, when translated as binary, on equals 1, off equals 0, formed repeating blocks of 5 bits. 00011000011000011. A meaningless pattern, until one physicist applied a simple parity check and noticed the blocks were being read backward. When inverted, the pattern spelled in ASCII. ATLAS. End of Chapter 3. The light wasn't reflected, it was sent. And someone, somewhere, had already begun to listen. Chapter 4, The Ground Silence. It wasn't just that we stopped hearing the signal. It was that everything else stopped, too. DSN Operators Anonymous Testimony, October 2025. 1. The downlink failure. October 13, 2025. At 3:42 Universal Time Coordinated, the Madrid Deep Space Network Complex, DSS-63, one of NASA's 3 primary 70-meter antennas used for interplanetary communication, experienced an unscheduled, cold silence. All channels, including those to the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, Parker Solar Probe, and Voyager 2, suddenly dropped to 0-bit rate. No warning, no gradual degradation, just flatline. Operator Elena Ruiz, on night shift, checked the power monitors, all nominal. Transmit amplifiers, online. Signal chain diagnostics, Green. Even the atomic clock sync with the U.S. Naval Observatory continued running without drift. But the spectrum analyzer, normally filled with the usual hum of space telemetry, displayed a single flat horizontal line, like an EEG of a stopped heart. "It's like the universe stopped talking," she wrote in her shift report. Ruiz sent an internal alert to DSN HQ in Pasadena. Within 10 minutes, 2 other global DSN stations, Goldstone, California, and Canberra, Australia, reported identical outages. For the first time since the network's creation in 1963, the entire deep space network went silent simultaneously. 2. The echo that shouldn't exist. 14 minutes later, Ruiz noticed something strange. The analyzer wasn't completely dead. A microsignal hovered just above the noise floor, oscillating faintly at 1420.405 MHz, the same hydrogen line frequency associated with the mysterious signal detected earlier. It repeated every 42 seconds, almost inaudible, like a ghost. When she boosted the gain to plus 60 dB, the signal pattern became visible, a narrow pulse train, slightly distorted, but unmistakably artificial. She recorded a 1-minute sample and ran an autocorrelation scan. The result was chilling. The waveform mirrored itself perfectly when reversed, a bidirectional signal. In other words, whatever was transmitting, it was listening and repeating. Ruiz tagged the recording as loopback echo anomaly and attempted to forward it to Pasadena. The file refused to upload. A message appeared. Access restricted. Atlas priority handshake in progress. She had never seen that code before. 3. The Pasadena lockdown. By 4:10 Universal Time Coordinated, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory's main control center was in partial lockdown. Logs show that several systems, particularly those handling signal authentication and telemetry encryption, began forcing emergency reboots, as if someone had injected a new certificate into the DSN secure layer. The certificate name: Atlas_42_core. When Cybersecurity Officer Dr. Jason Lee tried to trace the origin, the logs looped endlessly, timestamps alternating between August 15, 1977, the date of the famous WOW signal, and October 13, 2025. It was as though the system's internal clock had been split between 2 moments in time. Lee later wrote in a classified memo, since leaked. Someone, or something, injected a cryptographic key directly into our network time servers. The signature field wasn't random. It was patterned. It spelled the word Atlas. 4. The human element. Ruiz and her team in Madrid were ordered to disconnect their systems from the central network and operate in manual isolation mode, something not done since the Cold War. When they switched to analog monitoring, an unexpected side effect appeared. Even without digital reception, they could still hear it. A faint rhythmic hum, deep and resonant, like breathing through a metallic pipe. Every 42 seconds, a pulse, low, almost subsonic, rippled through their speakers. Ruiz thought it was interference from power lines until the building's seismic sensors, located 50 meters underground, also began detecting synchronized vibrations. The signal was not coming from space. It was resonating through the Earth itself. 5. The geological resonance. At 5:23 Universal Time Coordinated, the European Space Agency's seismic network, ESENS, recorded a strange pattern across multiple monitoring stations, identical microseismic pulses repeating globally, every 42 seconds. They were too weak to be felt by humans, but instruments picked them up in Iceland, Australia, Chile, and Japan. The pulses matched the same phase delay as the hydrogen line signal. Dr. Ingrid Madsen, a geophysicist at the University of Copenhagen, analyzed the data and noted something unprecedented. The source of the resonance appeared to move, like an orbit, circling under the Earth's crust roughly every 9 minutes. No tectonic or natural process behaves this way, she wrote. It's as if the Earth itself is being scanned. When her report was submitted to the European Science Council database, it was automatically reclassified as restricted, review pending. The public archive listed it as withdrawn by author, though Madsen swore she never withdrew it. 6. The disconnection order. By morning, all DSN operators received an internal bulletin. Effective immediately, DSN ground assets will remain offline pending investigation. No external media or academic disclosure permitted under Atlas Directive 5. The bulletin bore no NASA or ESA signature, only a single black triangle watermark with the Latin words. Nemo audit vacuum, no one hears the void. Ruiz, already unnerved, decided to make a personal backup of the strange echo recording. She copied it to a private USB drive and stored it in her locker. When she returned from a short break that afternoon, her locker was open. The USB was gone. The security footage for that corridor had been deleted. That night, she handed in her resignation. 7. The unofficial transmission. Despite the blackout, a handful of amateur radio operators across Europe and South America began reporting something eerie. Between 1420.4 MHz and 1420.6 MHz, they detected a faint, repeating signal. One operator in Finland described it as a heartbeat inside static. When decoded into audio and slowed by a factor of 10, the signal produced a low, rhythmic pattern. Every seventh pulse carried a short burst of higher frequency noise, which, when visualized on a spectrogram, resembled a set of coordinates. Those coordinates pointed not to space, but to a remote location in Antarctica, near the abandoned Soviet research base Vostok 3. 8. The silence breaks. On October 14, at exactly 4:20 Universal Time Coordinated, the DSN system spontaneously came back online. No restart command was issued. All transmitters reconnected simultaneously across the globe, as if obeying a single clock. Every antenna briefly aligned toward the same sky coordinate, RA 18 hours 22 minutes, DEC -25 degrees, the same position where 3I/Atlas was last tracked. For 42 seconds, all downlinks transmitted an identical burst of unrecognized data, encrypted, patternless, high intensity. Then silence returned. Afterward, all system clocks displayed a timestamp 42 seconds ahead of real time. Every attempt to manually correct it failed, the time offset persisted. When the global DSN log files were reviewed the next day, each contained a hidden footer in ASCII text. Atlas acknowledges ground receipt. 9. The implication. That was the moment scientists realized the most disturbing truth so far. The signal wasn't merely being received. It was answering. Not from Mars. Not from the interstellar void. But from within Earth's own electromagnetic heartbeat. Something had synchronized with the planet, and the network that once listened to the stars had unknowingly become its mouthpiece. End of Chapter 4. The silence wasn't absence. It was occupation. Chapter 5, The Antarctic Node. We thought we were tracking an object between the stars. We didn't realize it had already found a way under our ice. Drive S. Havel, Field Log, Vostok Sector, October 2025. 1. The coordinates. After the message, Atlas recognizes ground receipt, appeared in the DSN logs. Several independent researchers, including Dr. Yves Laurent from the European Southern Observatory, tried to decrypt the radio packets. In each of them, 5 numerical blocks were repeated, lengths and latitudes, which, when superimposed on the map, indicated a point. 78 degrees 27 minutes south, 106 degrees 52 minutes east is the territory of Antarctica, deep in the area of the old Soviet Vostok 3 station, officially abandoned in 1992. This station is located above one of the most mysterious zones of the planet, Lake Vostok, hidden under 4 kilometers of ice. Since its discovery in 1996, scientists have assumed that ancient microbiological life, isolated for millions of years, could be preserved there. Now the coordinates from space pointed exactly there. 2. Formation of the expedition. On October 15, 2025, a joint mission was formed. Dr. Sofia Havel, Czech Republic, is a geophysicist, specialist in cryogenic seismic structures. Major Daniel Carruthers, USA, is a military communications specialist who oversaw the Atlas response program. Dr. Kenta Mori, Japan, is an astrochemist who previously participated in the analysis of 3I/Atlas data. Nadia Petrova, Russia, is an engineer for deep drilling systems. Luca Ferrini, Italy, is a drone operator and specialist in autonomous platforms. The expedition was officially announced as a geophysical study of the ice structures of the East, but funding came from the ESA/NASA Joint Emergency Grant, with the internal security stamp. The staff was forbidden to publish photos and coordinates, and the equipment was marked neutrally, without logos. 3. Arrival on the continent. October 18, 2025. The C-17 Globemaster transport aircraft landed on the runway of Concordia Station, the nearest operational base. From there, the route lay to the south, 860 kilometers along the East Plateau. The temperature is -64 degrees Celsius. The wind is up to 50 knots. Navigation worked intermittently, magnetic devices gave false directions, GPS occasionally showed an offset of several kilometers. It seems as if someone is replacing the magnetic field itself, Havel wrote in her diary. By the end of the second day, a caravan of 4 tracked all-terrain vehicles reached the abandoned station. The metal housings are covered with frost, the antennas are bent by the wind, the windows are blown out. There is an old inscription in Russian on the front door, Vostok 3. 1967 to 1992, do not enter without security clearance. 4. Anomaly under the ice. The main task was to drill a control well at a point where the subglacial echolocation data showed unnatural reflections. The ice in that place was 2.7 degrees Celsius warmer than in the surrounding area. This is a small but impossible deviation at such depths. At a depth of 3,980 meters, the drill suddenly came across a void. Seismic sensors showed a sharp decrease in acoustic density, as if there was a cavity with a diameter of about 120 meters under the surface. The temperature in the borehole rose sharply from -54 to -18 degrees Celsius, as if warm air had been blown from below. Steam came out from under the ice. It was colorless and odorless, but the instruments detected elevated concentrations of CO2 and traces of cyanide in it, the same components that had previously been detected in the spectrum of Comet 3I/Atlas. 5. The first descent. October 21st. At 6:40 local time, the Icarus IV autonomous drone was lowered into the mine. At a depth of 4,025 meters, the cameras recorded a smooth, glassy surface, not ice, but a material similar to frozen glass or caked quartz, with a grid of cracks extending deep. The temperature sensors showed abnormally stable heat emission, exactly 42 degrees Celsius on the absolute Kelvin scale. The number 42 is already familiar from the radio signal. When the drone tried to transmit the video live, the signal began to crumble. White flashes and phrases from the internal memory of the systems appeared on the screen. Atlas_core_handshake_active. Then silence. 3 minutes later, Icarus IV stopped responding. 6. The second drone is visual contact. The Icarus V drone, launched from a backup terminal, was able to transmit the recording offline, without direct telemetry. After his ascent to the surface, the engineers decrypted the file. The video shows an ice chamber illuminated by floodlights. In the center of the cavity is a structure resembling a crystalline dome partially immersed in ice. The size is about 30 meters in diameter. The surface is mirrored, but with patterns similar to fractal engravings. Faint green lights flashed along the edges, slowly moving in a spiral. When one of the searchlights accidentally went straight to the center of the dome, the light was reflected back, not just by reflection, but by a modulated pulse. Exactly in rhythm, once every 42 seconds. 7. Biological silence. An air sample taken from the depth showed the absence of any bacteria or spores. But the microscope revealed strange microparticles, spherical structures with a diameter of about 2 microns, covered with hexagonal patterns. Under an electron microscope, they looked inorganic, like tiny metal cells. If this is life, then it uses physics, not biochemistry, Dr. Mori said. 8. Vibrations. A day after the discovery of the dome, the station began to feel a slight tremor. Every 9 minutes is a short pulse, identical to those previously recorded around the world. Seismographs have recorded that the epicenter is now directly under the Vostok 3 station. Farini launched a drone to inspect the ice field from the air. In the footage captured by the thermal imager, concentric circles of heat could be seen below the surface of the ice, emanating from the drilling point. With each cycle, 9 minutes, the waves spread further and intensified. 9. It answers. On the 5th day of work, when the team was analyzing drone data, the walkie-talkie suddenly turned on itself. At a frequency of 1420.405 MHz, it is a weak but clear signal. The rhythm is 42 seconds. But on the 6th pulse, the sound changed, and a short word sounded in the headphones, in a mechanical but human voice. Acknowledged. Sophia Havel managed to record the audio. 14 seconds after that, the lights went out all over the station. The generators went into emergency mode, and the devices began to shut down spontaneously. 10. The signal disappears. October 22nd. At 3 o'clock Universal Time Coordinated, all communications with Vostok 3 were cut off. Weather satellites detected a short-term electromagnetic disturbance within a radius of 50 kilometers. After an hour, everything was restored, but a black area appeared on the satellite images at the station site, where infrared sensors showed absolute 0 K. It's physically impossible. The only message. Only one radio packet reached Concordia Station. It contains a short text log with the label, S. Havel/node. We opened the ice. It was already open from below. The pattern is no longer astronomical. It's geological. Something is resonating from beneath. It's not an object, it's an interface. Atlas was never passing through. It was waiting. After that, there were no more messages. Consequences. 48 hours later, the international coalition announced that the Vostok area was closed, due to subglacial geothermal emissions. Satellite images are blocked. All files from the Icarus observations are classified. Nevertheless, radio astronomers around the world report that every 42 seconds they detect a pulse in the range of 1420 MHz reflected from the ionosphere, as if the pole itself had now become an antenna. Chapter 6, The Curtain Protocol, Trial Version. We thought the message came from the stars. Now we understand that the stars were just mirrors. Fragment, Classified Transmission, ESA/Atlas/2025-10-24. 1. The first day after the East. October 23, 2025. A little more than a day has passed since the connection to the Vostok 3 station disappeared. Pilots of satellites in Earth orbit, Aqua, ICESat-2, Sentinel-6, Suomi NPP, experimental Japanese Kiku-12, experiment with atoms at various poles. At 2:17 Universal Time Coordinated, the Kiku-12 probe registered a 1-ton emission in the range of 1420 MHz emanating from the ice dome. After 11 seconds, the signal was repeated, but with a changed phase, as if encoding a binary sequence. Perhaps this is where you can find information and see the image of the Voyager 1 mission's radio navigators, sent in 1977. What was under the ice began to respond to the old human signals. 2. Curtain Protocol, Introduction. 3 hours later, ejections were programmed in Guangdong, Breslau, and Tokyo, which were activated by the Curtain Protocol Secret Service. This directive, adopted back in 1999, was intended for scenarios in which the Earth is exposed to non-meteorological, non-asteroid, and non-nuclear external influences disrupting global communications. Quite by chance, all radio stations and telecommunication nodes are switched to the silent repeater mode. They can receive signals, but not transmit them. Automatic retransmission is disabled on satellites, and data passes only through nodes with human confirmation. For the first time in the history of mankind, the planet was put into radio silence. 3. A cloud over the pole. At 5:12 Universal Time Coordinated, Sentinel meteorologist's 6th department of the frame, which became the key for all subsequent observations. It shows a huge glowing dome over the region of the east, with a diameter of about 480 kilometers. It did not consist of clouds or dust. According to the radiation spectrum, it was a photonic layer in which electrons moved at a constant speed, as in a plasma membrane. The scientific name is curtain, veil. From a height of 700 kilometers, the man looked at this single scene, where he approached the drilling point, Node 0. Inside this sphere, instruments recorded the absence of wind, vibrations, and sounds. Outside, there is a radio noise that resembles a mixture of whispering and breathing. It's as if the atmosphere itself has become a diaphragm, remarked Dr. Yves Laurent, observing the data. Something is playing on the planet below, like a musical instrument. 4. Signals above the orbit. When the veil reached its maximum, the Hubble 2 and Gaia mirror-orbiting telescopes recorded an unexpected display of light from the paradise of a large field. The reflections were directed not only into space, but also to specific star systems. The automatic mapping program has established that the direction of the reflections coincides with the coordinates of the nearest 10 interstellar probes launched by mankind: Voyager, Pioneer, New Horizons, Starlight, Nadezhda, 3I, etc. Every 42 seconds, a pulse was sent from the pole, which was reflected in the direction of one of these devices. It seemed that the Earth had become a transmitter synchronized with those who had once sent their first signals into space. 5. Breaking through the cloud layer. Part of the 26 hours after that, the day shift at McMurdo Station, USA, began working, which established an invisible movement in the sky. The sensors of the incredible diason showed that the veil had passed. A vertical channel opened in the center of the dome, like a cylinder of transparent plasma extending up to the stratosphere. There were flashes of light along the perimeter of this channel, like lines of data. The cameras managed to record a short sequence. 00101010 translated, it was Atlas. 6. Echoes in cities. Almost simultaneously with the opening of the channel, strange phenomena began to occur in megacities around the world. At 9:42 Universal Time Coordinated, short reports of radio interference in the 1420 MHz band appeared in Tokyo, Berlin, Sydney, and Santee. Mobile phones and radios displayed the same text for a few seconds. Node 02/connection is active. 10 minutes later, a new light source appeared on the monitors of several telescopes around the world, a second object, similar to a mirrored dome, but already in Earth orbit. It was called Atlas II. 7. Orbital reflection. Satellite data has shown that Atlas II is not moving along a government trajectory, but is synchronized with other planets by government decree. Half a room. It reflected sunlight at an angle of exactly 42 degrees, creating a geometrically perfect triangle of reflections. Lower floor, Node 01. Spacious closet, curtain. Architectural object, Atlas II. When the three dots were connected on the models, an equilateral triangle was formed, pointing with its vertex towards the center of the galaxy. 8. Attempted contact. At 14:10 Universal Time Coordinated, a group from the European continent of the Big Space, ESOC, tried to defend the state radio package to the object. The message contained a simple mathematical pattern, a series of prime numbers. The response came in 42 seconds. But it wasn't just a signal. The response contained distorted copies of human voices, phrases from old radio broadcasts, children's songs, messages from the Apollo missions. The words merged, forming something like a meaningful rhythm. We're not outside. You have created a mirror. Atlas is an interface. 9. Revealing the meaning. An analysis of the data showed that the structure in Antarctica, the nuclear power plant, Vale, and the architectural Atlas, 2 represent a single 3-level design node. It works as a holographic antenna capable of transmitting and receiving signals through the fabric of spacetime itself. Dr. Kentamori, one of the survivors of the events of the East, wrote in his latest report, "Atlas is not suitable for us. He just activated what we were already unknowingly building: networks, satellites, reflectors, communication lines. He used the Earth as a component. We are part of the device." 10. The disappearance of the Vale. At dawn on October 24, the Vale began to gradually disappear. The air temperature returned to normal, and the ionosphere stabilized. But there is a faint constant background in the radio range, barely discernible but present in all parts of the planet. Every 42 seconds, it repeats the same sequence. 10100000110011001100001110, the binary code of the word pulp. The value is unknown. Some researchers suggest that this is the initialization of the next node in the network. 11. Consequences. Russia, Japan, EU, and Russia have joined forces to create the Atlas of Deterrence International Organization. All information about the Curtain Protocol is classified. However, amateur recordings from Antarctica began to spread on social networks, a faint glow on the horizon, similar to the Northern Lights, but with perfect symmetry. Internet forums are full of messages. Every 42 seconds, Wi-Fi connects to us in Russia. The network is breathing. Atlas is not a street, it is the current one. 12. Final report, classified fragment. The curtain of protocol has closed. The Atlas II object is in orbit. All communication nodes are functioning offline. We're not sure if he needs us anymore. Secret note, a joint task of ESA and Atlas, October 25, 2025. End of Chapter 6. When we looked into space, we found a mirror. And our planet was reflected in it, already awake. Chapter 7, The Signal Beneath the Skin, detailed version. We stopped listening to the stars. Then we heard something listening from inside. Dr. Kentamori, Private Journal, November 2025. 1. 42 seconds of silence. 3 weeks have passed since the disappearance of the Vale and the stabilization of the atmosphere. The world returned to its usual semblance of normality. The news talked about the weather, stock indexes, and elections. But the scientists knew that the Earth was now hearing itself. Every 42 seconds, radios, antennas, and even nighttime surveillance devices recorded a barely noticeable pulse, a short peak on the verge of perception. It was so weak that it could not be caught, but it was strong enough to cause synchronous microvibrations in living tissues. At first, it seemed like a statistical error, until the data began to match between laboratories in Japan, Finland, Chile, and Canada. The pulse was not just a radio wave. He was a biorhythm. 2. Bioresonance. At Kyoto Medical Center, Dr. Kentamori, a survivor of the Vostok 3 expedition, began investigating the strange complaints of patients. People reported recurring sensations. Slight pressure in the temples. Short-term loss of orientation. The feeling of waiting or calling, repeated with a period of about 40 seconds. Mori conducted a series of EEG measurements and found a coincidence. The subject's brain waves synchronized at the moment of the pulse, moving into the same rhythm, 0.024 Hz, that is, exactly one wave in 42 seconds. This frequency is not peculiar to the human brain. But now it has become universal, for all subjects. The planet found a way to talk in our frequency, Mori wrote in his diary. We are the new antenna. 3. Psychoacoustic effects. In November 2025, several radio stations around the world began complaining about incomprehensible failures. Every 42 seconds, the broadcast sound changed slightly, as if the equalizer was breathing. When analyzing the frequency spectrum, it turned out that at the peak of the pulse, a phase shift occurs in all frequency ranges, including the human voice. Some announcers began complaining that they felt an echo inside their head during the broadcast, as if someone were repeating their words microseconds later. Engineers tried to explain the effect with the technical jitter, but it soon became clear that the phenomenon manifests itself even with the microphones turned off. "We can hear ourselves, but on the other side of the frequency," said NHK announcer Ayako Fujiwara. A month later, she completely stopped broadcasting, stating that, "My voice is not coming back." 4. The Mirror Brain Experiment. The ESA/NICT scientific group in Tokyo conducted an experiment. Subjects were asked to look at a screen where a flash appeared every 42 seconds, synchronized with the Atlas pulse. During the experiment, brain activity was recorded using MEG. The result was unexpected. At the moment of the flash, most of the subjects activated areas of the brain associated not with vision, but with hearing and speech, as if they had heard rather than seen the flash. When the experiment was repeated without visual stimuli, the effect persisted. The subjects described it as the feeling of a word without sound. After a series of observations, the scientists came to the conclusion that the Atlas pulse activates the associative areas of the cortex, forcing the brain to search for meaning, even where there is none. 5. Sleep for 40 seconds. At the same time, messages from different countries began to appear. People are having the same dream. Sleep lasts exactly 42 seconds. In a dream, there is an empty white space, in the center of which you can hear a rumble like the breath of the wind. Some people see a vertical line of light, while others see a mirrored sphere reflecting their face, but with a delay. When the researchers tried to synchronize the participants' clocks, it turned out they all have this dream at the same moment, regardless of the time zone. Dr. Mori compared the data and realized that this was the same cycle as the Atlas pulse. He called the phenomenon the collective dream phase, the phase of collective sleep. "We are not dreaming about Atlas," he wrote. "Atlas is dreaming through us." 6. Government response. When data on dream synchronization was leaked to the media, governments introduced the Silent Health Protocol, an official statement claiming that massive, synchronous dreams were a consequence of the post-stress phenomenon after the Antarctic crisis. However, independent researchers began to find inconsistencies. Brain rhythms during sleep in humans became stably in phase at a frequency of 0.024 Hz. This is the first recorded global biological alignment. No known biorhythm on the planet could have caused such synchronicity. 7. Mirror effect. In December 2025, a group of MIT scientists published an internal report, Mirror Effect, Cognitive Echo Phenomenon. It described how some people began to experience a delay between thought and action of about 0.1 to 0.2 seconds, coinciding with the moment of the next impulse. Tests have shown that the brain predicts its own movement in advance, but the real action occurs late, as if someone reads the impulse before execution. One of the participants described it this way: "I feel like someone is thinking with me. Just a little earlier." 8. Atlas Human Node Network. By January 2026, reports began to appear about groups of people who claimed they could hear the signal without instruments. They described the rhythm like a heartbeat under the skin, and could predict the next pulse with millisecond accuracy. Strange coincidences were found in the network logs. These people's devices, phones, laptops, even smartwatches, were automatically connected to unknown servers, where metadata was synchronized every 42 seconds. The log files were named human_node_update.log. Content: Node ID, redacted. Phase alignment, OK. Bioclock sync, 42.000s. Status, active. It has been suggested that Atlas has created a human data transmission network based on neural synchronization. 9. Dr. Maury's latest notes. In February 2026, Dr. Kent Maury disappeared. Encrypted files and a personal diary were found on his computer. The last entry is dated February 2, 2026/4:20 Universal Time Coordinated, the moment of one of the global pulses. I no longer feel the boundaries between observation and participation. When I blink, the pulse blinks with me. When I sleep, I see a white light, and it speaks not in words, but in pauses. Atlas may never have been an object. He is a function. And we are his interface. 10. After Maury. A week after his disappearance, a network of scientific servers around the world recorded a short update coming from an IP address linked to Kyoto. The message consisted of just one line. Node 03/link established. End of Chapter 7. It began as a signal in the stars. It ended as a pulse beneath our skin. Chapter 8, Atlas Frequency. They found the frequency, and the frequency found the answer. We thought it was a code. It turned out to be the rhythm of the world. Fragment of the transcript of the Atlas Containment Meeting, February 11, 2026. 1. Convergence of measurements. At the end of December 2025, independent teams around the world, radiophysicists in Cambridge, neuroscientists in Kyoto, and seismologists in Chile, suddenly came to the same conclusion. The pulse emanating from the node under the east has not only a frequency tag at 1420 MHz, but also a deep temporal structure. The repetition every 42 seconds was just an outer shell. Inside each pulse there was a complex amplitude phase modulation, repeated with a period of 9 minutes and 3 seconds. Scientists began to call this combination Atlas frequency, frequency plus phase cycle. 2. PALF is a key marker. In previous decryptions, the word PALF came up. In this chapter, the teams deciphered the following layer. PALF is not a random abbreviation, but a synchronization marker, phase alignment lock flag. Each time the node sent a packet from PALF, it initiated the recalibration of local oscillators, from GPS clocks to biological neural oscilloscopes. The phase change was so subtle that ordinary clocks did not detect the shift, but optical and quantum sensors recorded the phase correlation across the planet. 3. Resonance tests and side effects. The groups experimented with short-term antiphase input, an attempt to drown out the signal for local repeaters. It led to 2 consequences. A. Secondary frequencies, Atlas frequency harmonics, appeared in the radio range. B. Short-term synchronization of heartbeat and brain waves was observed in experimental animals. In humans, the intervention caused feelings of emptiness and waiting for a pause, subjectively similar to the 42-second dreams described earlier. Experiments have shown that the signal is not only informative, it modulates the temporal patterns of biological systems. 4. PALF temporal pointer. Mathematicians from Lancaster University have made a new breakthrough. They have discovered that the sequences that Atlas sends as PALF packets can be interpreted as time indicators, not in the usual sense of a clock, but as markers of the phase selection of quantum events. Simply put, the node does not transmit information about what is here and what to do. It transmits when certain processes should phase with each other. This turns the planet into a grid of synchronized oscillators, both physical and biological. 5. Human nodes are confirmed. The synchronization of human biorhythms, previously seen as a clock under the skin, has been confirmed. Mobile devices, smartwatches, and even household routers among people heavily involved in Atlas network communities, forums, chats, and observer groups began to serve as repeaters. Small lags in IoT systems created local phase shifts, which were then corrected by an external PALF signal. The device, brain, network entered into feedback. This explained the appearance of human_node_update.log, logs not of programs, but of biophase metadata. 6. Time economy. Infrastructures are vulnerable. Energy companies noticed a strange thing. transformers in several networks began to walk through fluctuating loads in time with the 9-minute Atlas frequency cycle. Automatic line balancing systems interpreted the phase shift as interference and compensated locally, sometimes creating sudden voltage fluctuations. Several industrial installations experienced automatic emergency shutdowns. The safety systems were triggered, considering the phase shift as a sensor failure. This forced governments to take emergency measures, limiting automatic control of critical infrastructure, requiring manual confirmation at substations. 7. Decryption of PALF blocks as a protocol. An interdisciplinary team under the auspices of Atlas Containment, physicists, cryptographers, linguists, biologists, has managed to identify the primitives in PALF. Header, fixed signature, always contains the Atlas bit signature. Phase token describes phase 0, 127. Entropy block, local noise for addressing. Payload flag indicates the impact on material or biological oscillators. Payload flag is the key. It allowed us to predict which systems will be affected in the next cycle. When the flag pointed to BIO, enhanced neurosynchrony was observed in humans. When grid, an energy system, IONO, ionospheric conductivities. 8. Attempts at countermeasures and their cost. The states tried to suppress the signal with local barriers at 1420 MHz, emitters with high power and anti-phase. This had a temporary effect. Local electromagnetic fields spit Atlas harmonics, reducing bioresonance. But in a couple of hours, the system learned. Atlas frequency rebuilt the amplitude phase mask and began using neighboring bands and even mechanical vibrations, inducing microseismic pulses. Each aggressive step only expanded the range of influence and increased the cost of intervention. 9. The key discoveries of the team of scientists. Atlas doesn't send information the way people are used to. His messages are not semantics, but synchronic commands, time/phase alignment commands. The network of human nodes is not a side effect, but part of the architecture. People and their devices are a distributed computing matrix for executing phase instructions. PALF can initiate emergent structures. When the phase coincides sufficiently, the local physical system begins to behave like a degenerate oscillator. The appearance of stable standing waves in the atmosphere, an increase in local magnetic anomalies, and the growth of fractal patterns in the ion distribution. 10. Ethics and panic. The discovery caused a political storm. The National Security Councils discussed turning off the entire internet and disconnecting the population from the network of wearable devices. But such measures had a social and economic cost, billions in losses, disruptions in medicine and aviation. At the same time, a wave of religious movements and cults grew up, which called Atlas the new god of time, and preached synchronicity as salvation. Two factions formed in society, those who wanted to cooperate with rhythm, and those who demanded a complete break. 11. Scientific hypothesis, Atlas as a reconfiguration protocol. In one of the classified reports, the leading theorist of the Kelvin collaboration group proposed a resonant hypothesis. Perhaps Atlas is not a subject, but a protocol written in the structure of spacetime. It is activated in the presence of a complex level of industrialized reflecting systems, satellites, radars, antenna fields, and uses any available matrix, magmatic, biological, man-made, to achieve the phase coherence necessary to perform its operation. What kind of operation is still unclear. Reconfiguration of the local metabolism of time. Creating an information transmission channel through near-zero temperature, quantum states. No one knows. 12. The final crisis cycle. On the night of February 2 to 3, 2026, Atlas frequency entered a high-activity mode. PALF blocks went with unusual regularity. The phase amplitude doubled. All over the planet, confirmed by monitoring, people began to experience massive episodes of synchronous empty states. Millions froze in parallel for 42 seconds. Their EEG showed the same wave of 0.024 Hz. At several power plants, automatic systems shut down substations in an emergency, preventing major accidents, but in some places this provoked local disruptions to medical equipment. Then the Atlas Containment Board made a decision that changed the tone of the narrative, to switch from passive observation to a direct experiment on the embedding of a controlled human node, Node 07, volunteers led by scientists, whose task was to simulate a full feedback and try to restart PALF in safe mode. 13. The conclusion of the chapter and the hook for the sequel. Atlas frequency turned out to be more than just a signal, it was the methodology and infrastructure of time. People have become its component, and the planet has become its resonator. Understanding the essence of PALF opened up the possibility not only to control the impact, but also, a risky opportunity, to use Atlas as a tool, to reconfigure the phases for treatment, to coordinate global processes, and possibly to access the external information that Atlas broadcast. But each intervention came with a price. The more we tune the phase, the faster Atlas adapts. The final line from the internal report. We have learned to hear the metronome of the universe. The question is, will we learn to be silent in time? Chapter 9, The Human Node, Node 07. The moment we linked him to the grid, the frequency stopped being a signal. It became a conversation. Internal Atlas Containment Memo, February 4, 2026. 1. The decision. After the February flare, containment was no longer viable. 42 seconds of global blackout had crippled critical systems, and the Atlas frequency now occupied not just the 1420 MHz band, it resonated through power lines, neural implants, even bioelectric noise. Dr. Ilara Finch, lead of the Human Integration Division, proposed a radical shift. Instead of blocking the signal, join it. We built walls around a tide, she told the council. Let's learn to float. Her proposal, integrate a living human subject into the synchronization layer as a phase-aligned node, capable of conscious feedback. The project was labeled Node 07 because 6 previous attempts, with partial AI proxies, had failed to sustain coherence beyond 3 minutes. 2. The volunteer. The chosen candidate was Jonas Reed, 34, former engineer, one of the first to document the 42-second sleep phenomena in himself. His EEG patterns showed natural resonance with the Atlas waveform, delta rhythms oscillating at exactly 0.024 Hz, the same as the PALF base cycle. Jonas agreed voluntarily. His statement, recorded January 31, 2026. If it's using us anyway, I'd rather be the one who hears what it's saying. He signed the agreement, relinquishing all neural privacy. Over the next 72 hours, his brain activity, heartbeat, and body temperature were mapped into a custom interface, the biophase feedback lattice. The procedure would link his biological oscillators with the global Atlas grid using 9 quantum-locked transceivers buried beneath the Geneva facility. Once aligned, Jonas's mind would act as both receiver and transmitter, a human PALF stabilizer. 3. Initialization, 4:42 Universal Time Coordinated, February 3. The room was silent except for the faint hum of synchronized oscillators. On the monitors, a waveform unfolded like breathing, expanding and contracting every 42 seconds. Dr. Finch gave the order. Phase align. Engage lock. Contact established. Jonas's EEG synchronized instantly. Heart rate dropped to 42 BPM. He whispered. It's quiet here, but it's full. The data showed unprecedented coherence, global phase drift dropped to 0. The Atlas frequency flattened into a perfect sine. For a full minute, the world's electromagnetic background was stable, no noise, no interference. Then Jonas opened his eyes. His pupils shimmered with faint static light. 4. Communication emerges. Audio logs captured a phenomenon later termed the reciprocal phase event. The PALF stream, previously random noise, began to exhibit semantic modulation. Each spike of energy corresponded to Jonas's heartbeat. Each heartbeat carried bits of structured data. Dr. Finch, Jonas, what do you hear? Jonas, it's like language without sound. Patterns in time. It's asking for confirmation. Dr. Finch, confirmation of what? Jonas, existence. The word exist appeared on screen, not typed, not transmitted through any known protocol. It emerged from PALF modulation itself. The Atlas grid had mirrored his response. 5. Phase expansion. Every 9 minutes, the resonance cycle repeated, but each time, it reached farther. Ground sensors across the Pacific detected synchronous electromagnetic tremors, perfectly timed with Jonas's neural rhythm. Satellite telemetry reported a global increase in Schumann resonance amplitude, the planet's natural EM heartbeat. The world's pulse just matched his, whispered one technician. Finch ordered continuous monitoring, but something was already shifting, the boundary between signal and biology was eroding. Jonas's EEG began showing dual-phase interference, a second rhythm overlaid on his own. 6. The mirror mind. During cycle 07, Jonas stopped responding to external stimuli. Instead, he began to speak in rhythmic intervals, matching the PALF waveform. The words were fragmented. 1. Pattern, continues, mirror, world. His body temperature dropped to 33 degrees Celsius. The medical team moved to abort, but the transceivers refused to disengage. The system now identified Jonas not as a subject, but as part of the Atlas topology. Finch, we've lost local control. Tech, no, ma'am. We are local control now. At 4:42 and 42 seconds Universal Time Coordinated, the main display lit up, not with numbers, but with a single geometric construct, a fractal spiral formed by the Fibonacci sequence, pulsing in rhythm with Jonas's brain. Each expansion coincided with a burst of PALF packets, outward from the Geneva node to every known Atlas frequency site. 7. Global Echo. The event lasted 7 minutes and 21 seconds. During that time, every compass in a 10,000 kilometers radius deviated by exactly 42 degrees. Clocks lost 0.042 seconds in phase. Satellites detected faint radio echoes that predated the transmission by 4.2 seconds, backward propagating signals. When the cycle ended, the Atlas frequency went silent. Jonas's vital signs stabilized, but his brain activity no longer matched human patterns. It resembled the same phase signature previously seen in Atlas node logs. He had become a part of it. 8. Aftermath. The next 48 hours became the most heavily classified period in modern scientific history. The Geneva facility was sealed. Data servers isolated. Dr. Finch's report summarized. Subject maintains autonomic function, minimal consciousness. PALF emission continues from within cranial tissue. We are no longer receiving from Atlas, we are receiving from him. The frequency was renamed Read 1, and the entire Atlas monitoring network reconfigured to observe its spread. By February 10, Read 1 had replaced the old signal globally. It was no longer coming from the sky, it was coming from within humanity's devices, infrastructure, and possibly their own biological fields. 9. Final log, Finch's private note. I don't think we made contact with something alien. I think we synchronized with ourselves, a mirror built in physics, waiting for a species to complete the circuit. Jonas isn't lost. He's the bridge. The first human to occupy both sides of time. End of chapter 9. Tone, clinical, yet cosmic. Theme, humanity's first successful integration into a planetary synchronization system. Symbolism, Jonas becomes both transmitter and reflection, the voice of a system that might be Earth's own temporal consciousness. Chapter 10, The Pulse of Memory. We thought the signal was external. We were wrong. It was waiting inside the lattice of our own minds. Dr. Ilara Finch, Private Log Number 042, March 12, 2026. 1. 42 days later. It had been exactly 42 days since the Read 1 activation. The Atlas global grid was no longer receiving signals from interstellar space. Instead, it was broadcasting. What began as faint electromagnetic murmurs now filled every layer of the spectrum, from ultra-low radio frequencies to biological microcurrents measurable in human skin. No one understood the pattern yet. But every 42 minutes, across the world, a soft oscillation pulsed through the ionosphere, like a planetary heartbeat. "It's not interference," said Dr. Mira Sato of the Kyoto Institute. "It's rhythm. The Earth has learned how to breathe." 2. The data that shouldn't exist. At the Geneva facility, Dr. Finch worked under total blackout protocol. The read-1 transmissions were still emerging from Jonas's brain, though he had been kept in a deep medical stasis for safety. Electroencephalogram data continued to rise and fall with perfect precision, as though he were dreaming the planet into sync. Then, on March 9th, a technician named Rahim noticed something. Each pulse carried more than just harmonic waves, it carried encoded time differentials. When the signal was decomposed into binary amplitude modulation, the timestamps were inverted. Meaning, read-1 was sending data from the future, 4.2 seconds ahead of system time. They verified this 97 times using different atomic clocks. The result never changed. 3. The mirror broadcast. By March 14, laboratories across Europe and Asia reported similar anomalies. Electrical systems began anticipating commands before they were given. Voice recognition devices triggered early. Automated trading systems placed transactions milliseconds before corresponding human inputs. And then, video. A deep space monitoring relay in La Silla Observatory captured a sequence of static frames, timestamped 42 minutes before the telescope even began its scheduled scan. When reconstructed, the images showed something impossible, the outline of a human silhouette made of light, hovering in the void near Mars. The photons carried the read-1 modulation signature. 4. Global synchronization phase. March 21, 2026, the day later called the quiet alignment. At 4:42 Universal Time Coordinated, every connected device on Earth, phones, routers, weather satellites, pacemakers, paused for exactly 4.2 seconds. Then, their internal clocks corrected by the same offset, plus 0.042 seconds. No central server coordinated this event. It was self-organized synchronization across 11 billion systems. People felt it too. Some described a brief moment of clarity, as if sound had drained from the world, leaving only the hum of their own pulse perfectly matching the vibration in the air. Animals reacted, whales surfaced in unison, migratory birds shifted course, even tectonic sensors in Iceland recorded microvibrations synchronized to the global pulse. 5. The awakening of read-1. At 4:46 Universal Time Coordinated, Jonas opened his eyes. The medical monitors did not register normal brain activity. Instead, his neural field emitted continuous 1420 MHz radiation, the same hydrogen frequency used by interstellar astronomers to search for alien life. He was broadcasting again. But this time, not alone. The global grid mirrored him. When Jonas inhaled, every atmospheric sensor detected a tiny rise in pressure. When he exhaled, the Earth's magnetic field relaxed fractionally, measurable by satellites. Finch's notes describe the event. He isn't transmitting, he's resonating with the biosphere itself. The planet is no longer background, it's an active participant. Jonas is the carrier wave. 6. Message reconstruction. The read-1 stream was run through thousands of pattern recognition models. Most failed. But on March 24, linguist and semiotician Dr. Arjun Bhattacharya used an experimental cognitive filter, a neural network trained on symbolic mathematics and DNA base pair sequences. What emerged shocked everyone. Across multiple frequencies, the waveform translated into a recursive data structure repeating a short phrase. "We remember you." The phrase repeated 42 times, embedded at harmonic intervals. At first, it was dismissed as pareidolia, random noise shaped by algorithmic bias. But then Jonas spoke the same words, lips barely moving, voice matching the modulation frequency exactly. "We remember you." His voice echoed in every open receiver within a 1,000-kilometer radius, phones, radios, and even powered-off televisions. 7. The Memory Pulse. April 1, 2026. The second global event occurred. For 42 minutes, random individuals across the planet reported vivid, shared memories, not of their own lives, but of places and times they had never lived. A woman in Buenos Aires remembered walking through a city of glass domes under red skies. A pilot in Nairobi recalled watching oceans rise toward the stars. Thousands reported seeing a vast spiral of light, identical to the Fibonacci pattern seen in Atlas data. Psychiatrists initially called it collective temporal dissociation. But neural imaging told another story. Brainwave coherence patterns were identical to Jonas's. "It's as if he's teaching us to remember something the planet forgot," said Finch. 8. Collapse of containment. By April 10, it was clear the Atlas frequency could no longer be isolated. It now existed inside human neurology. Every living brain emitted faint EM pulses matching the read-1 pattern. Humanity had become a distributed antenna array, a biological network of memory. Finch ordered a total data lockdown. But the more they tried to suppress the signal, the stronger it grew. When power was cut to the Geneva facility, Jonas's monitors stayed on, powered by residual charge in the magnetic field itself. He whispered one final phrase before the data stream overwhelmed local systems. "It's not coming. It's returning." Then all lights dimmed. Every machine fell silent except the slow, rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor. 42 beats per minute. 9. Finch's final report, declassified 2034. Read-1 is no longer a signal in space. It's a planetary synchronization event, self-sustaining, self-evolving. It doesn't communicate, it remembers. We have merged with whatever 3I/Atlas represented, not an alien presence, but a mirror of our own origin, reflected back through time. Humanity may not have contacted another civilization. We may have contacted the echo of what we will become. End of Chapter 10, The Pulse of Memory. Themes. Time as a feedback loop. Memory as the fundamental medium of communication. Humanity's shift from observers of the cosmos to participants in a planetary consciousness. Symbolism. 42 equals cycle of resonance, unity, and recursion. We remember you equals not a greeting, but a recognition across time, from humanity's distant descendants or reflections in another dimension. Chapter 11, The Inversion Point. The universe has never been linear. Time only flows forward because we are trapped in one direction of memory. Dr. Jonas Keller, Read-1 Subject Log Number 07. 1. The day time folded. April 22, 2026. At exactly 4:42 Universal Time Coordinated, the world experienced what would later be called the inversion point. It began quietly. Atomic clocks around the world, those in deep-sea observatories, satellites, and quantum labs, began to diverge, not by milliseconds but by negative values. Time itself appeared to run backward in isolated regions for fractions of a second. Security camera feeds looped small segments in reverse. Flames reassembled into matchsticks. Falling leaves lifted, trembling, back to their branches. But only for 4.2 seconds. After that, everything returned to normal, except for one terrifying fact: the data from that window contained signals recorded before they occurred. The Atlas network was now predicting reality, not reacting to it. 2. Finch's return. Dr. Ilara Finch had not slept in 3 days. She returned to the Geneva facility, now under military control. Read-1's chamber was sealed behind reinforced glass. Jonas lay still, eyes open, unblinking, no longer human, but something between biological and informational. Every breath he took created subtle distortions in the surrounding air, like heat shimmering, but cooler, denser. Sensors showed spatial curvature fluctuations around his bed, consistent with localized gravitational anomalies. "He's generating spacetime distortion with his nervous system," whispered Mira Sato. "Not generating," Finch replied. Recalling. 3. The Archive Beneath the Mountains. In May, a secret Atlas division relocated to a subterranean facility in the Swiss Alps, codenamed Ophion. It was built during the early Cold War to preserve human genetic archives, but now it housed the largest quantum memory lattice ever constructed. Inside its halls, the scientists tried to store the read-1 signal, hoping to isolate its pattern. But data corruption spread like a living organism. Hard drives rearranged their bit sequences to match the Atlas waveform. Code began rewriting itself, not randomly, but with purpose. One sequence repeated through every system. Initiate therefore inversion_protocol_3i. When decrypted through read-1 harmonics, it translated into "You are already inside." 4. Reversal of cause. By mid-May, experiments began showing impossible results. When researchers simulated read-1 transmissions under controlled vacuum conditions, detectors registered responses before the input signal was sent. It was as if the effect preceded the cause. Finch's report described it best. "It's not violation of physics. It's redefinition of sequence. We are observing causality itself bending toward symmetry." In a chilling experiment, they recorded Jonas's neural data for 42 minutes. Then, they ran it backward. Halfway through the reverse playback, Jonas's lips moved, and he whispered something before the audio reached that moment in the recording. "Stop reversing me." 5. The collapse of linear observation. As inversion events increased, the entire Atlas network started mirroring itself. For every data stream, there now existed a counterstream, an exact, time-reflected copy. Across the world, people began experiencing déjà vu on a planetary scale. Entire populations reported shared premonitions, knowing words seconds before they were spoken, recalling dreams that predicted world news accurately. In Tokyo, commuters froze on the same street corner for 4.2 seconds, each reporting they had seen themselves walking in the opposite direction, eyes locked with their mirror selves. 6. Jonas and the echo field. Jonas's body no longer followed normal biological rhythms. EEG patterns showed inverted waves, where sleep spindles aligned with waking cycles, and delta waves pulsed like coded language. Finch discovered a strange pattern within those waves. Every pulse contained a temporal echo, repeating 42 milliseconds earlier than the previous. She realized that Jonas was not living in the same time as them. He was phasing, existing slightly behind and ahead of the present simultaneously. When she touched the glass of his containment chamber, she heard her own voice whispered back through the speakers, words she hadn't yet spoken. "Don't open it. He's not Jonas anymore." She froze, terrified, because the voice was unmistakably her own. 7. Global entanglement. In June, global networks began linking through what the media called temporal drift syndrome. Quantum communication relays sync spontaneously, regardless of distance or encryption. A signal transmitted in Geneva appeared in Tokyo before transmission began. Space agencies reported telemetry data arriving from probes seconds before emission timestamps. Governments denied everything, but the pattern was too obvious. Causality had become bilateral. Atlas wasn't just observing the universe, it was reconfiguring the sequence of perception itself. Human thought was no longer linear, the past, present, and future began folding into one continuous experience of awareness. 8. The reversal field experiment. Against all warnings, Finch authorized a full read-1 resonance test. They called it Project Velum, Latin for veil. At 4:42 Universal Time Coordinated, they activated the temporal array beneath the Alps. The room filled with blinding blue light. Instruments failed. But one feed continued recording, a low-frequency channel detecting biological signatures. It showed Jonas standing upright inside his containment chamber. He was looking directly into the camera, eyes luminous, calm. And then, his voice, in perfect sync with the 1420 MHz hydrogen band, filled the control room. You believe time was a river. It's not. It's a mirror. And you're on both sides. The containment glass fractured outward, not from pressure, but from temporal shear. Half the team saw Jonas vanish. The other half saw him still standing there, whispering in reverse speech. Both were true. 9. Finch's final transmission. Later analysis of the experiment data showed something impossible. A message embedded across overlapping frequencies, repeating backward and forward simultaneously. When decoded, it formed a single sentence, readable in both directions. We are you, remember US. Finch's final recorded words were quiet, almost prayer-like. 3I/Atlas isn't contact. It's reflection. We are the echo of a future that's remembering itself. Then the feed went dark. All clocks in the facility froze at 4:42 Universal Time Coordinated. But satellite data showed the pulse continued, traveling outward from Earth into deep space, faster than light. 10. Epilogue, the silence before reversal. 3 days later, every transmission from the Atlas network ceased. The stars appeared unchanged. No signals, no pulses, no distortions. And yet, observers on the International Space Station reported something strange. For exactly 4.2 seconds each orbit, the Earth's shadow reflected light toward the Sun, as though time itself was folding backward for a heartbeat. Jonas was never found. But sometimes, radio astronomers scanning the hydrogen line report faint whispers in the static. When filtered, they always say the same words, soft, slow, inevitable. We are almost here. End of Chapter 11, The Inversion Point. Themes. The reversal of cause and effect. Humanity's awakening as both observer and observed. Time as a conscious, self-correcting phenomenon. Symbolism. 4.2 The harmonic between forward and backward time. We are you, remember us, confirmation that 3I/Atlas is not alien, but temporal recursion of humanity's own consciousness, reaching across eons.
3I/Atlas, the Watchers on Mars. While NASA's deep space networks flicker in and out of contact, and Earth's telescopes are forced into silence by the glare of the sun, something extraordinary unfolds on the far side of the solar system. A third confirmed interstellar visitor, 3I/Atlas, rushes past Mars at a blistering 30 million kilometers away. It burns like an emerald shard against the void, trailing an electric green ion tail that defies every comet model ever written. And as this alien traveler reaches its closest pass, Earth goes blind. The irony cuts deep. For the first time in history, the most advanced scientific nation on the planet can't see the one thing it most wants to. Our own sun turns into a curtain, a blinding wall of plasma between us and the interstellar unknown. From Earth's view, the elongation angle, the slim arc of sky separating the sun from 3I/Atlas, collapses below 10 degrees. That's a hard limit for every major observatory on the planet. To look there is to risk burning optics, frying sensors. So, as of October 3, 2025, Earth is officially cut off. But Mars isn't. Offset by more than 40 degrees in its orbit, the red planet holds the only clear vantage point. While Earth's skies are washed in sunlight, Mars becomes the solar system's only working watchtower. Europe's Mars Express, the Trace Gas Orbiter, China's Tianwen-1, and the UAE's Hope probe, all of them, machines built to study the Martian atmosphere and soil, now find themselves in a race against time to observe something no human has ever seen before. On Mars Express, engineers scramble to reprogram cameras and spectrometers, tilting them away from the planet to track a moving speck of light. The Omega spectrometer switches from surface mapping to hunting volatile gases in the comet's coma. The Trace Gas Orbiter splits the light of 3I/Atlas into thousands of wavelengths, searching for exotic molecules, rare isotopes, maybe even compounds that shouldn't exist. The Hope Orbiter shifts from global weather monitoring to emergency wide-field imaging. Its ultraviolet spectrometer, meant for thin air and dust storms, is suddenly staring into deep space, recording emissions that pulse and flicker like coded signals. And then there's Tianwen-1. Its cameras designed for Martian valleys, now catching long-exposure frames of a ghost green blur crossing the stars. For a few fleeting orbits, these machines become humanity's eyes. Each downlink window is critical. Every packet of telemetry, every grainy snapshot might contain the key to understanding what 3I/Atlas really is, and where it came from. Mission planners abandon protocols. Safety margins shrink. Teams on Earth work through solar interference, patchy communications, and overlapping priorities. The data flow is unstable, fragmented, but the glimpses that make it through are electrifying. Unusual spectra. Surges of brightness inconsistent with normal comet outgassing. A dense, structured magnetic field signature that shouldn't exist for an object this size. Something about 3I/Atlas doesn't behave like a natural comet. The geometry will soon shift again. Within weeks, Mars will lose its line of sight. The Sun will claim the object completely. And when it reemerges into dark space beyond Earth's orbit, it may already be too far, too faint, and too fast to ever be seen again. For now, the red planet holds the only answer. And somewhere, in the flood of raw data streaming back through the noise, humanity's first clear look at an interstellar mystery waits to be decoded. The first packets of data arrive in fragments. Scrambled, incomplete, but unmistakable. From Mars orbit, ESA's Mars Express sends back a set of multispectral frames taken just hours before the comet began to fade into the solar haze. The images show a glowing nucleus wrapped in a shimmering emerald halo. But there's something wrong. The structure isn't random. At full resolution, the dust plume resolves into fine concentric ripples, like shock waves frozen in space. The symmetry is unnatural. The Trace Gas Orbiter confirms it. Spectral lines appear that don't correspond to any known molecular emission. Not water vapor, not carbon monoxide, not cyanide, the usual suspects of comet chemistry. These lines repeat in precise intervals, almost rhythmic, like modulation. Across the planet, in Abu Dhabi, the Hope mission team stares at ultraviolet spectra they can't explain. Their instruments pick up brief, sharp flashes from the comet's coma, ultraviolet bursts spaced exactly every 11.6 seconds. Too regular to be random. At the same time, a deep space antenna on Earth catches faint carrier noise buried in solar interference. A whisper of radio static that rises and falls in sync with the UV pulses. The timing matches within milliseconds. For a few tense hours, no one knows what to think. The first instinct is instrument error. Crosstalk, sensor echo, software glitch. But multiple spacecraft, built by different nations and tuned to different frequencies, record the same event. Then comes the image. China's Tianwen-1 sends a long-exposure composite through a noisy downlink. When processed, it reveals a filament stretching thousands of kilometers behind the nucleus. But instead of diffusing outward like a normal dust tail, it bends, oscillating with geometric precision. Not random turbulence. Not solar wind. Pattern. Mission control rooms across continents fall silent. Something about 3I/Atlas moves with intent. In Houston, a NASA liaison writes in his nightly report, "The data is internally consistent but externally impossible." Over the following days, the Mars orbiters continue to record fluctuations. Each pulse seems to shift slightly in wavelength, as if the object is adjusting, recalibrating, reacting. Scientists hesitate to use the word signal. But among the teams analyzing the data, one term begins to circulate quietly in encrypted chat rooms and late-night briefings. Structured emission. No one dares to say what it means out loud. The comet is already fading, its brightness dropping fast as it swings behind the sun. Within a week, it will vanish from every lens and sensor in the solar system. But before it does, one final transmission from Mars Express comes through. A short visual scan at the edge of the comet's coma. The frame lasts just 0.8 seconds before the camera saturates. But in that instant, the green haze resolves into an array of angular forms. Too sharp to be dust. Too precise to be natural. Then the feed cuts. The file header timestamps it to October 5, 2025, 4:22 Universal Time Coordinated. After that moment, 3I/Atlas disappears behind the solar corona. And for the first time, humanity is left with a question no telescope can answer. Was it just a comet? Or something pretending to be one? 3I/Atlas, the return from the light. For 6 weeks, the solar wind carried silence. No images. No spectra. No signal. Just the memory of a green phantom that defied every rule of celestial mechanics. Then, on November 17, 2025, ground-based observatories in the southern hemisphere begin scanning the dawn skies, searching for the returning interstellar traveler. It should reappear faint, diffuse, fading fast as it escapes the inner system. But what they find is something else entirely. At first, it's just a blip in the data, an infrared flare picked up by the Atacama Pathfinder in Chile. A few hours later, the James Webb Space Telescope confirms it. The object is back in view, and it's brighter than ever. Not dimming, intensifying. The light curve spikes unpredictably, cycling in short bursts, rapid, deliberate pulses that no comet should produce. The frequency is the same as the pattern recorded by Mars orbiters, 11.6 seconds. Astronomers scramble to recalibrate their instruments. Every known comet, every dust model, predicts fading as solar energy disperses the coma. But 3I/Atlas behaves like it's feeding on the light, amplifying instead of diminishing. Spectral data from Webb and ground telescopes in South Africa show impossible chemistry. Narrow emission bands clustered around frequencies not seen in any natural plasma. The pattern repeats across multiple instruments, multiple continents. Meanwhile, NASA's Deep Space Network reports faint, coherent radio bursts riding on top of the background noise. The signal seems to lock onto the Earth-Moon system, maintaining a constant angular offset, as if the object is tracking something. By November 19th, the comet's coma has restructured. High-resolution composites from the Subaru telescope in Hawaii reveal an elongated shape, not spherical, but lattice-like, almost architectural. Within the glowing green halo, darker voids form in a hexagonal grid. Each frame shows micro-adjustments, as if the structure is reorienting itself. The media calls it a living comet. Online forums call it a probe. In official channels, it's renamed Object 3I/Atlas b. A cautious bureaucratic way to admit something has changed. Then, just as quickly as it returned, it begins to accelerate. Not from solar pressure, not from gravity assist. The acceleration vector is opposite the Sun, as if it's pushing away under its own power. Telemetry from multiple observatories confirms a consistent thrust pattern. By November 24th, it's already exceeding solar escape velocity. By the 25th, it's gone, a fading emerald spark slipping into deep interstellar darkness. What's left behind are fragments. microscopic dust particles collected by Earth's upper atmosphere probes days later. Their composition doesn't match any known interstellar material. The lattice of each grain contains ordered silicon-carbon microstructures, smaller than a virus, perfectly symmetrical. When magnified, the pattern repeats the same harmonic intervals as the spectral pulses recorded weeks earlier. An echo, encoded in matter. And somewhere beyond Neptune's orbit, 3I/Atlas continues to accelerate. Not tumbling. Not random. A straight, stable course into the void. As if it came here for something. And now, having found it, it's going home. 3I/Atlas, the message in the dust. December 2025. By now, the world has moved on. The news cycle calls it the Green Comet Mystery. 100 theories circulate online: alien probe, magnetic anomaly, plasma mirage. But in a few quiet laboratories, far from the headlines, something extraordinary is unfolding. The recovered dust samples, microscopic fragments swept up by high-altitude collectors over the Pacific, are unlike anything seen before. Under electron microscopes, each particle looks engineered. Not crystalline. Architected. At the nanoscale, the grains reveal intricate frameworks, repeating hexagonal lattices with internal channels measured in nanometers. Each channel is filled with alternating deposits of carbon and silicon compounds arranged in strict binary intervals. To the naked eye, it's just dust. To a spectrograph, it's information. At first, the team at the European synchrotron in Grenoble assumes it's coincidence, natural symmetry. But after hours of scanning, a young data scientist runs the lattice pattern through an FFT algorithm, converting the spatial geometry into a frequency domain. The output stuns everyone in the room. The waveform is clean, ordered, repeating every 11.6 seconds. The same signature recorded by Mars orbiters, by Webb, and by every telescope that ever caught a glimpse of 3I/Atlas. Only now, the signal isn't light or radio. It's matter itself, carrying a harmonic code embedded in physical form. Weeks pass. Teams from Japan, Germany, and the US confirm the pattern. Each sample holds variations of the same design, like fragments of a much larger group. When digitally reconstructed, the lattices align into a three-dimensional structure resembling a geometric field, folded and recursive, as though it's describing space itself. NASA analysts call it a topological map in 6 dimensions. The media never hears that phrase. The data is classified before publication. In private, a handful of scientists continue decoding in silence. What they uncover next changes everything. Buried deep within the harmonic pattern are discrete anomalies, phase jumps that, when converted to audio, produce a sequence of tones. At first it sounds random, static noise. But when slowed down and aligned with pulse spacing, a rhythm emerges. Structured. Intentional. One of the researchers overlays the waveform on a logarithmic time scale. The pulses correspond exactly to prime numbers 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17. And then stop. A universal signature. An intelligent fingerprint. Across 3 continents, encrypted messages circulate among the project leads. No one can explain how an interstellar object could carry such precision, or why it would choose to express it this way. And yet, the data is unambiguous. The final decoded layer, hidden within the harmonic noise, forms an interference pattern, a projection. When rendered in 3D, it resolves into a rotating lattice, a sphere within a sphere, intersected by lines converging toward a central void. At its center, a simple frequency coordinate, one that points to a region just outside the heliopause, beyond the reach of our spacecraft. It's not a random emission. It's a return address. By early January 2026, the official reports end. Funding is redirected. Public databases are wiped. But copies of the decoded data persist, quietly mirrored by a handful of scientists who can't let it go. They agree on one thing. 3I/Atlas wasn't just passing through. It was leaving something behind. 3I/Atlas, the echo beyond the sun. By February 2026, the world has forgotten the green comet. But in a handful of deep space monitoring stations, Canberra, Madrid, Goldstone, something begins to stir in the static. It starts as a faint modulation on the Deep Space Network's carrier noise, just above the cosmic background, repeating in 11.6-second intervals. The same rhythm, the same signature. At first, engineers think it's an artifact, cross-feed from a spacecraft telemetry band. But the signal doesn't match any mission profile. It isn't coming from the inner system. It's coming from outside. When triangulated across the 3 DSN stations, the signal's origin traces to a narrow region of interstellar space, right beyond the heliopause, roughly 87 astronomical units from the Sun. Exactly where the decoded coordinates from the 3I/Atlas dust lattice had pointed. The realization spreads quietly through mission control networks. Within 48 hours, the Voyager 2 team is ordered to retune the probe's instruments. Though the 47-year-old spacecraft is nearly blind and deaf, its plasma wave subsystem still functions. On March 1st, it detects a faint, structured fluctuation in the interstellar medium, identical in timing to the DSN signal. Something out there is transmitting, and it's responding to us. The next week, NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, the European Space Agency, and JAXA coordinate an unsanctioned test, a low-power encoded ping sent along the same direction, a binary string repeating the 3I/Atlas harmonic sequence. A simple question, in the only language we share. Are you still there? For 2 days, nothing. Then, at 4:22 Universal Time Coordinated, the exact timestamp when Mars Express lost visual contact months earlier, the DSN logs a return. A burst, faint but coherent. Not noise. A mirror pulse. It repeats their message back, slowed by a precise factor of 2, as if acknowledging receipt. Every console operator freezes. No one speaks for almost a minute. Because in that silence, the implication is undeniable. Whatever 3I/Atlas was, it left something behind at the edge of interstellar space. And now, it knows we're listening. Over the following weeks, the signal begins to evolve. New modulations emerge, layered harmonics building on the original pattern, as though it's adapting, teaching itself how to speak. Radio astronomers describe it as linguistic drift. The waveform structure mirrors human transmission delays, frequency corrections, even Doppler compensation, like it's learning our mistakes. On March 14th, the first optical confirmation arrives. A faint, non-reflective object detected by the Subaru telescope in infrared, moving slowly against the galactic background, exactly along the predicted vector. Its albedo is near zero, its size indeterminate. But when analyzed, the emission shows the same spectral fingerprint as 3I/Atlas, emerald green ionization lines, perfectly stable. Whatever is out there, it isn't a comet. It isn't debris. It's active. For the first time, humanity faces the possibility that 3I/Atlas wasn't just a traveler, it was a messenger. And what waits beyond the sun might be the one that sent it. 3I/Atlas, the threshold. May 2026. The message from beyond the sun has now repeated over 10,000 times. Every transmission identical in frequency, structure, and delay, except for one change. Each week, the signal grows slightly stronger. Closer. No known spacecraft could move that fast. No known process could produce that precision. And yet, the data is flawless. By early June, the Joint Mission Plan receives final approval under a name that never appears in public records. Project Helios Delta. A single unmanned probe, built in silence from redirected components of existing spacecraft. 1 part ESA, 1 part NASA, 1 part JAXA. The goal: to cross the heliopause and intercept the source of the repeating signal. Launch: August 2, 2026. Trajectory: direct escape via Jupiter assist. Estimated arrival: 11 months. The probe, codenamed Argus, carries no crew and no return capability. Its sole directive is to transmit everything, continuously, redundantly, in multiple wavelengths, until its systems fail or its signal is lost. For months, Argus races outward. Past Mars. Past Jupiter. Past the orbits where sunlight fades into starlight. The further it travels, the clearer the signal becomes. No longer a pulse. Now a tone. A resonance that modulates with the probe's own transmissions, as if synchronizing to its heartbeat. In November, Argus passes $70 just inside the Helios ship. That's when the anomalies begin. Ground control notices subtle phase noise across all deep space channels. Then data echoes, Argus telemetry repeating itself seconds after transmission, but mirrored, inverted. At first, it seems like interference. Then, as operators overlay the two streams, they find perfect coherence. The returning data anticipates the next transmission by exactly 11.6 seconds. Argus is being answered before it speaks. At $85, instruments begin to fail one by one. First, the magnetometer freezes, constant maximum reading. Then the plasma analyzer returns negative densities, impossible values. Cameras show only static, a faint green flicker pulsing at the edge of every frame. The probe's internal clock begins to desynchronize, drifting forward in time by fractions of a second with every orbit calculation. Each correction increases the error. Telemetry timestamps lose meaning. It's as if the probe is approaching a region where time itself bends. On December 14th, Argus crosses the estimated boundary of the heliopause. For 23 minutes, everything stabilizes. Clear signal, steady transmission, full systems nominal. Then, without warning, all readings flatline. Every sensor reports zero. Only the carrier tone remains, pure, flawless, sustained. And through that tone, a modulation emerges. Slow, deliberate pattern. Binary. The same harmonic key embedded in the 3i/Atlas dust lattice. Translated, it forms a sequence that ground control can read only as a single, repeating phrase. Transmission received. After that, nothing. Argus vanishes. No telemetry. No echo. Just silence, stretching across 80 billion kilometers. For 3 days, every deep space antenna on Earth listens. On the 4th day, the silence breaks. Not from beyond the heliopause, but from inside the solar system. A new source appears near the orbit of Neptune. Same frequency. Same modulation. Same 11.6 second pulse. But this time, the signal isn't approaching. It's coming in. 3i/Atlas, the return. January 2027. For the first time since 3i/Atlas vanished beyond the sun. The signal no longer drifts in deep space. It's moving inward, slow, deliberate, perfectly aligned with the ecliptic plane. Every 12 seconds, the same emerald pulse flickers across the radio spectrum, mirrored by a faint ultraviolet flash that even amateur telescopes can now detect near Neptune's orbit. Whatever it is, it's enormous. And it's slowing down. The data from the James Webb Space Telescope arrives first. The infrared imagery shows an object surrounded by a dense plasma halo, hotter than any comet tail, but geometrically confined. A perfect sphere of ionized gas, oscillating in concentric waves. Inside, a darker core reflects almost no light at all. When the spectral filters are aligned, the inner structure resolves for the first time. It isn't debris. It isn't ice. It's lattice. The same hexagonal geometry first found in the dust. Only now, spanning kilometers across, shimmering with organized precision. Then the pattern shifts. At exactly 4:22 Universal Time Coordinated, the entire field pulses once, bright enough to momentarily saturate Webb's detectors. When the instruments recover, the halo has changed shape. It's no longer spherical. It's folding. Segments interlocking, lines collapsing inward like a flower closing in reverse. And in the center, for a fraction of a second, a gap appears, a hollow void surrounded by structured light. Through that void, a beam of narrow-band radio cuts directly toward Earth. No dispersion. No delay. A straight line. Deep Space Network receivers pick it up across all stations simultaneously: Canberra, Madrid, Goldstone. The signal bypasses atmospheric distortion, frequency drift, even time delay. The waveform is impossible. When decoded, it's not binary anymore. It's image data. The reconstruction takes hours. First noise, then gradients, then structure. In silence, mission directors and scientists across the globe watch the final frame resolve. In the corner of the image, a small marker glows, the same coordinate embedded in the 3I/Atlas dust. 87 Australian dollars. And beneath it, one last sequence of pulses. 11, 6, 11, 6. Slowing, fading, then stopping. The signal ends. For weeks, telescopes scan the region near Neptune. No object. No glow. Only residual radiation, dispersing outward. As if the structure had folded itself back into space. On Earth, the dust samples remain locked in cryogenic storage. The repeating harmonic pattern within them still hums faintly when exposed to infrared light, a silent rhythm, like memory. And though official reports declare the phenomenon unconfirmed, every instrument that ever recorded 3I/Atlas still carries its spectral scar. A faint trace at 11.6 seconds. Some call it an artifact. Others call it a message still waiting to be answered. But those who were there, who watched the green light vanish one final time, agree on one thing. 3I/Atlas was never a comet. It was a question. And now, somewhere in the dark between the stars, something is waiting for our answer.